We were talking about prayer in Sunday school this morning, and it reminded me of this old joke that said this lady, and some of you may have heard this, but it said this lady was poor and she was hungry. And she used to sit on her front porch and pray to God that God would somehow bring food to her, that somehow she would be able to eat for the day. And living next door to her was this atheist that used to sit there and say, I don't know why you pray to God, because there is no God. And the lady would always respond to her neighbor by saying, well, there is a God and God will provide. And they would argue back and forth, there is no God and there is a God. And so she kept praying. Well, one day the atheist said, I'm going to show her. I'm going to go buy her some groceries and show her that it's not God that provides. And so he goes and buys a couple bags of groceries, puts it on her porch, and then kind of hides behind the bushes. And she opens up the door and sees all of her groceries there. And she says, oh, praise the Lord, God provided. And then this guy jumped out of the bush and says, nope, it wasn't God, it was me. I told you there was no God. And the lady says, well, I disagree with you. God provided here with some groceries. I just didn't know he was going to make Satan deliver them. So, see, it still makes you laugh, even if you've heard it before. But as we close out our series on messy spirituality this morning, I kept thinking to myself, how do we bring this to a close? And the last chapter of the book kind of just reiterates some of what was in the previous chapters. And I kept thinking to myself, so what do we do? We've been talking about how spirituality is messy, how our lives are chaotic, and how sometimes we think that we have to have it all perfect and right in order for God to be able to work. So we put God off until we get our house in order and all of these things. And I kept thinking, well, what are we supposed to do with that? Now that we've talked about how much life is messy and how we can get some things in order and how God meets us in the chaos, what do we do with this understanding? And as I was thinking about that, I kept thinking about the Beatitudes. And in particular, one of the Beatitudes, and you can put that up on the screen, in Matthew chapter 5, verse 6, says this: blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. And for some reason, that verse kept coming back to me as I was thinking about this, because I think that's the simple answer on what it means to be spiritual. That if we hunger and thirst after righteousness, if we hunger and thirst after God and the things of God, we will be filled. That's our goal as a spiritual people, is to be filled with the presence of God, to let God come into our lives and make a difference so that we can handle the messiness and the chaoticness of life, so that we can meet God and we can make a difference, and not only in our lives, but in the lives of those that we come into contact with. So we are to hunger after, or thirst and hunger after the things of God. And I love how that ends. Blessed are those that do this, because they will be filled. And I like how the Beatitudes use those words, hunger and thirst, because I think those are very human words that we can understand. All of us in here can understand what it means to be very hungry. Those times where we felt like we were starving and we have hunger pangs. And I'm granted we don't know what true starvation really feels like, but we know when we have overexerted ourselves or we haven't eaten in a while that we get hungry, and if you're like me, you get cranky. Okay, and you get frustrated and you just want to eat. I've always said that if I was ever selected to be on the show Survivor, I would be the first person kicked off. Not because I couldn't handle it, just because I would be very cranky if I did not eat every, 30 minutes. All right, 35. But we hunger, and then when we hunger, we want food, and it doesn't really matter what we eat, if it's good or bad. We just want to stuff our faces so that we can feel full and satisfied. And then when we're thirsty, I'm sure all of you can think about how you get very thirsty and your mouth dries up and it sticks together, and all you're thinking about is getting something to quench that thirst, and that is all that takes precedent. I need to quench this thirst. I am so thirsty and so dried up. And if you ever been in like a sporting event or practice and it was so hot, I remember practicing like in this type of weather for football, which was miserable. But we were so thirsty, we would go to the water station. And instead of putting it in our mouths, we'd put it in our mouths for a minute, and then for some reason we started dumping it all over our bodies, just hoping it ended up where it needed to end up. But I was so thirsty, I had to do that and quench it, and I had to douse myself in this water. Now, this beatitude, this idea of messy spirituality and our spiritual lives, is that. What if we craved God as much as we craved food and water? What if we craved God as much as we craved to fill the needs that we have? We don't really think that way sometimes. Oh, I'm not going to crave God that much. Well, yeah, God can fill me, but I don't really need to go after it, or it's not that big of a deal. And so we slowly starve ourselves from God, and we wonder why we don't feel connected. But again, Christ is saying, blessed are those who crave God. Blessed are those who in the midst of the chaos and the messiness of their lives, they still search to be connected to the presence of God and to be filled. Because when we try to satisfy our thirst or we try to satisfy our hunger, that's the goal, to be filled, to be satisfied so that we can continue on our journey, to get the strength that we need. I thought about Exodus 33 when Moses was talking to God. And this is about how much we should crave God. Moses just spent 40 days with God on Mount Sinai, was in the presence of God, getting the 10 Commandments, getting all of these instructions, but still Moses wanted more. Moses spent so much time with God that Moses wanted to see more of God. So Moses started to tell God, Lord, I need to see you. Lord, I want you. Lord, I need your presence. So God finally says, okay, Moses, you want to see some more of me? Get ready, because I'm about to show you something. And in the 33rd chapter of Exodus, God kind of gave Moses a glimpse of God's back. Just a small little glimpse of God. And do you remember what the result of that experience was? Moses was changed. Moses saw a glimpse of God and saw that it was good, but it changed Moses. It even changed Moses' appearance because it touched Moses so deeply. We long for the glimpse of God. We may not understand exactly how that works or what we need to do, but that's part of our spiritual journey to say, all right, Lord, I got a little taste, but I need more. I need a glimpse of you, God. And if we get a glimpse of God, even in the messiness of our lives, God will change us and we will be filled. That is our goal, again, as a spiritual people, is to be changed. To say, all right, Lord, here I am. Change me. I think that we make the spiritual life a lot harder than it needs to be. I think that we make a lot of things harder than it needs to be. The simple fact is that we just need to connect to God and stay connected to God. Now, again, that's very simplistic because, as you know, that doesn't always work. We want to stay connected to God, but then either we disconnect for various reasons, or the craziness of life happens and pulls the plug, or, we stretch that plug so tight, like when you're vacuuming your house, and if you're like me, I don't want to have to plug in more than once, so I try to get as much as I can and say, nope, the plug's going to work, and I stretch that cord as much as it can until it rips out. And then I'm frustrated because I'm like, oh, now I got to walk all the way down the hall and plug it into another plug. Okay, life stretches us and we become disconnected. We try to stay connected. That is the goal of our spiritual life. And here's the truth. The longer we are disconnected from God, the harder it is to reconnect to God. Think about that for a moment. The longer we are disconnected from God, the harder it is to reconnect because we lose that drive. It's no different when somebody comes to church and they're regular attenders, but then slowly they start getting out of the habit of coming to church. And they'll tell me, they're like, well, nothing happened. We love the church and we want to come, but we got out of the habit of coming, and it's hard to get back into that. It's hard to become disciplined again to make church part of that. So the longer you're away, the harder it is to come back. And I find that very true in my own spiritual life. When I'm connected to God, when I am tapped in and being filled by God, things come and God lets me know. But when I'm disconnected, It's very hard sometimes to reconnect at certain points. Well, I've been gone so long, it's awkward now. Oh, I don't know what to say. But what Christ is saying is it doesn't matter how long you've been away. It doesn't matter how long your house has been a mess and your life has been chaotic. Come back. Hunger and thirst after righteousness, and you will be filled. Am I doing that? Because this thirst and this hunger leads us to God. My job is to clear the path for that. My job is to clear a path so that I can get to God and God can come to me without being distracted and all of these things that I fill myself up on, so that when God shows up, I'm already full and I have no room for God. That's part of making room in our lives for God, is to say, I need to clear out all of this junk and clean all of this up so that God can fill me. No different when we were kids and your parents yelled at you, "Why did you ruin your dinner? Why did you eat before I just cooked this meal? Now you're not going to be hungry." And of course, being a kid, I used to say, "Oh, I'll still eat." But surely enough, I'd sit down to the table and be like, "Yep, I should not have ate that bag of chips," or whatever it was. Because we fill ourselves up with this junk food and we miss the nourishment that we need. We feel this pull towards God, and that hunger starts, and we want to walk towards God, but again, we get distracted. So we fill it up with other things, not the real thing. Our soul longs for God. Our soul longs to be connected to its source, to that source of nourishment. Do I allow space for that? Do I allow my life to say, okay, I need to crave God just as much as I crave all of this other stuff? And it doesn't happen all at once. You know, when they say, when you try to change your life and become healthy, they tell you small steps is the way to go. Because when you want to try to change something all at once and you go head over heels into something, it's not very sustainable. You know, you start out gung-ho, you lose a lot of steam. But if you slowly implement changes, slowly do this for a little bit and that, you condition yourself to be able to handle a little bit more and a little bit more. And you start to see changes and you start to get hope and you start to say, yes, that's going to motivate me to continue, and that's going to motivate me to become filled with all of these other things. So we start small. All right, if I go to the gym 2 days a week, well, maybe I can add another day. Or hey, if I try to cut out this part in my diet, maybe I can cut out something else. And slowly, when you see the change and you feel better and you feel healthy, you want to continue that. No different in our spiritual lives. When I get a glimpse of God, when I spend a little bit of time with God, what it's going to do is become contagious and make me want to spend even more time with God. So if I start out with my busy life and say, okay, I'm going to spend 1 minute with God today, and I say 1 minute because believe me, 1 minute is a lot for some people. Okay? But if I spend a small amount of time with God and in my spiritual life, it will whet my appetite and I'm going to want more. And I'm going to go back for more. And I'm going to say, okay, God, I got a little bit of a glimpse. I want a bigger glimpse. And we become deeper and longing in that spiritual life. You know, when I was in Portland with my brother, he took me to, they have a lot of food trucks in the city of Portland and a lot of good food. And they have a friend that has a food truck, and they are called, and I'm going to forget this, Bing Mi. It's some kind of Chinese crepe thing, okay? And they said, get on the website and look because we're going to go there. She wants to meet you and all of this. Well, I look, and what this thing is the crepe, so it's got this egg wrap, and inside of this egg wrap, it is filled with bean paste, chili paste, pickled vegetables, onions, and nonsense. So I told my brother, I'm driving there, and I'm starting to have a little bit of a panic attack, and I'm like, there's no way I'm eating this. There's no way I'm putting bean paste in my mouth. There's no way I'm eating all these vegetables and all of this. And he's like, well, all right, but don't offend her. Just take it. If you don't like it, we'll find you something else. Just taste it. And so I said, this is going to be the worst day of my life. So I go, and they cook this thing, and it does not look very good, okay? But I ate it. It has to be one of the best things I've ever put in my mouth. Okay, I ate it. and it was good. So what I did was I said, all right, 2 days later, I said, we have to go back because I need another one of those things. It was that good. But if I would not have tried it, if I would have closed myself off to that, I would never have known how good it was. And there would have been a time where I never would have even touched that thing. Like when I told Amanda what I ate, she's like, there is no way you ate that. She didn't even believe me. My spiritual life, if I let and I go to God, I say, God, I need you. And yes, it may not be as appetizing, and yes, I'm frustrated, and my life is a mess, and I don't know what to do. But if I feed from God, if I crave God, and I taste that it is good, I guarantee you, we will come back and we will say, I need more. I need it again. Because it was so good, and it filled me. I need this presence of God in my life. It starts with us saying, I need this. So this whole idea of messy spirituality, this whole idea of what we've been talking about, is to get us to understand that it doesn't matter where we come from, or if our life is a mess or chaotic, or if things are not cleaned up. We have to start with the acknowledgement that I need God. I have to start with this acknowledgement that we have been in the presence of God and it was good, and we want to return to that presence of God because we know that is what we need, and that is what we are craving, and that is what we are born for. And then once we go back to God and we go back to God, we start to clean up all of these messes in our life. And we start to put things in order and subtract things from that take our focus away from God. And yes, life has a habit of messing things up again all of the time. But we're on a journey. And part of the journey starts with us realizing that we need to hunger and thirst after God. That we need to hunger and thirst after this spiritual life. And if we hunger and we thirst after the spiritual life, little things start to change. And we start to see a difference. And we start to see the fingerprints of God in our life. And once we see that and we feel that, we will want to stay connected to it. Now, how you do that is up to you. That's part of your wrestling match in your own spiritual life. You say, all right, God, what do I need to do? What do I need to take away? What do I need to add? How do I continue on this path towards you? But that is our goal. For us to say, I hunger and thirst after righteousness. Or in Luke where it says, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all of these things will be added unto you. Am I seeking God first? And when we started out this series, we talked about how God ends up very far down on our list of priorities. But when we start moving God up, we also start to understand that because God is moving up on that list, the other things on the list become a little easier to handle. We start to learn to love ourselves and to love each other. We start to make little changes in our life so that other people, just like the children's story and the necklaces, that other people can see God in our life and that they can be touched as well and understand, hey, I want that. We can introduce people to God. Give it a try. You will taste it and it will be good. Be filled. Have the presence of God in your life so that you can continue with your life. You know, I always found that kind of ironic in my own spiritual life, that I neglect the very source that gives me the power to continue. That I neglect the very power that allows me the strength to continue this life in the messiness and the chaos of it. But it all starts with us hungering and thirsting after God. You know, we're going to sing, Here I Am, Lord. And I love that song. Is it I? Are you calling me? Here I am. I can only tell God, here I am, if I'm longing and thirsting and hungering after God. And if I do that, I can say, all right, Lord, here I am. Use me. Make a difference. Help me. Show me that presence. So wherever you are this morning, as we close this series, as we talk about our spiritual lives, are you craving God? Are you hungering and thirsting after what God is offering us? And again, I will guarantee you that if you taste it, you will know that it was good. and you will want to return over and over again. So let us pray. Lord, there are a lot of things that take our hunger away. We can satisfy it with a lot of things, and some of them may even make sense. But help us to leave room for you. Help us to hunger and thirst after righteousness and know that we will be filled. So, Lord, as we continue on in our messy lives, as we continue on in lives that hurt us and take the wind out of us, cause us to cry and laugh, and all of the things that life brings to us, help us to know that you are our source of nourishment, that you are our source of life. So help us to hunger and thirst after you. And help us to know that if we taste, and we taste that it is good, we will stay connected. Help us to see your fingerprints in our lives. Help us to be examples to others. Help us to love as you have loved. Help us to live our life connected to you so that others cannot help but to feel that power and presence around them as well. So, Lord, whether we are connected or whether we are going and looking for the plug to put back into the wall, be with us. Walk with us. Help us to be still and to know that you are God. And all of God's people said, Amen. If you'll please stand as the praise team comes. Make no mistake about it. God is calling us. And God is calling us to hold God's people in our hearts. Allow me to read out of the Message as we close. And this is how the Message puts that beatitude. You are blessed when you've worked up a good appetite for God. God's food and drink are the best meal you'll ever eat. And then it says this, let me tell you why you are here. You are here to be salt, seasoning that brings out the God flavors of this earth. If you lose your saltiness, how will people taste godliness? If you lost your usefulness, you will end up in the garbage. Here's another way to put it. You're here to be light, bringing out the God colors in the world. God is not a secret to be kept. We're going public with this. A public is a city on a hill. If I make you light bearers, you don't think I'm going to hide you under a bucket, do you? I'm putting you on a light stand. Now that I've put you there on a hilltop, on a light stand, shine. Keep open house. Be generous with your lives. By opening up to others, you'll prompt people to be open with God, their generous Father in heaven. Our job is to bring God to all those that we meet. But it starts with us filling ourselves with that presence and that holiness that is God. So as we leave this place, may we be the light on the hilltop. And all of God's people said,